Okay, folks, good evening, and welcome to this installment of our classes. I just want to remind everybody that there is a course, a series of courses, actually 5 courses, although I've only done 2 of them so far, at https://kabbalah-decoded.teachable.com. Let me write that in the chat box over here so you can all see it. Okay, that's there. If anyone wants to join, there are a series of classes, many lectures in each class, in each many videos in each lecture. It's the fundamentals, the essentials of Kabbalah courses, 5 of them. Okay. Tonight we're going to learn a little piece of Zohar. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to go through what the Zohar actually states, but basically it's talking about a certain incident that occurred in this week's Torah reading. Every week, it is customary to read a section from the Torah, from Scripture, from the Bible. And this week is a section called Vayeishev. It talks about after Jacob, Yaakov, had left his sojourn with Laban. He now moved to the land of Israel, and there he is living now in the land of Israel. Jacob's sons are already grown up, most of them, except the youngest ones, Joseph and Benjamin, Yosef and Binyamin. In any event, he sends out the brothers to go and graze the sheep in various pastures. And he then decides to send Joseph to see what they're up to. Now, up until this time, Joseph was not liked by the brothers. He was not liked at all by the brothers, because essentially they were really jealous of his position, really. I mean, that's why you could put it in simple, very simple terms. They were jealous of his position. He was the son of the favorite wife of Jacob. Jacob had 4 wives, and his wife Rachel was his favorite wife. She had passed away, and Joseph was her son. But not only that, Joseph happened to be a very straightforward and honest guy, like shoot from the hip kind of a person, and he said what he saw as the truth, and he didn't mask it at all. In fact, the Svirah of Yosef, the Svirah, if we're talking about Svirot are the divine emanations, which are found in all of the worlds. And just one second, just let me see here. Yeah, okay. The divine emanations which are found in all of the worlds, and they are called the Sfirot. They represent sort of various activities, as God says, according to my deeds I am called, the Medrash says. So if you have a look now on the following chart, this is a chart of the Sfirot, Keter, Chochmah, Bina, Dat, etc. You saw it all the way through to Malchut. These charts are available. I think they're available for download from our website, KabbalahDecoded.com. Kabbalah Decoded, no dash, just KabbalahDecoded.com. If you don't find them there for whatever reason, you can always ask me and I'll send you one of these charts. In any event, the Sphira that is associated with Joseph is called the Sphira of Yesod. The second last one over here. This one over here is Yesod. This one here, I hope you can see it, is, I'm sorry. Someone's writing on it over here for whatever reason. Okay. So Yesod over here is the Sphira, which is associated with Joseph. And this Sphira, the Sphira of Yesod, corresponds to the attribute of truth. Amongst other things, it corresponds to the attribute of truth. Yesod corresponds to truth. And that is the Sphira of Joseph. So Joseph, fortunately, unfortunately, said the truth the way he saw it, without attempting to varnish it or anything like that. That's the way he was. In any event, so Joseph is sent now by Jacob to go and see what his brothers are up to. Joseph is on the way, and he meets up with what the Torah, what Scripture describes as a man. He met a man. However, the sages said this wasn't just a man, this was in fact the angel Gabriel. He met the angel Gabriel on the way, and he asked them, "Where did you see my brothers?" Obviously, he described them. "Did you see my brothers? I thought they were here." And the man, Gabriel, says, "Yes, they were here, but then they went on to another place called Dotan." In fact, that's where he found them afterwards. But the expression that is used over here, when he's speaking to the angel asks him, "What do you want?" So he says, "Et achai ani mevakesh." I am seeking my brothers. I'm seeking my brothers. I'm looking for my brothers. So, on this, the Zohar explains that who is it that is seeking his brothers? The Zohar explains as follows. Yosef represents the concept of the idea of a person who is seeking a relationship with the divine presence. Joseph represents the tzaddik. Joseph is called Yosef HaTzaddik, Joseph the righteous person, the holy person, the saintly person. Joseph is the saintly person who is seeking a relationship with the Almighty, seeking a relationship with God. He's looking for the Shekhinah, for the divine presence. When he says, "I'm looking for my brothers," the word for brothers in Hebrew, achai, my brothers, also has another meaning. The word achai, from the word ach in Hebrew, is also related to the word ichui. Ichui means a bond. A bond. That's why brothers are called like a band of brothers, right? Brothers are form a bond by virtue of their birth. They have the same parents. And therefore, they're one bond. They're one unit to a certain extent. Of course, everyone's an individual within the unit, but they form a unit. These are the children, the brothers, and will be brothers and sisters as well. It makes no difference. But the point is that brothership, that brotherhood of the sons, of the children, is a result of them coming from the same source, the same parent. Therefore, their brothers, because their mother was the mother and father was the same. It's the same mother. If a person has more than one wife, I guess it could be stepbrothers. But when we talk about brothers in general, we're talking about blood brothers. Okay, same parents in general. So Joseph was seeking his brothers. Now, these were brothers from his father, because his mother only had 2 children, and the rest of the tribes were from the other 3 wives of Jacob. So, Joseph says to the angel, "Et achai ani mevakesh," which we translated as literally, "My brothers I am seeking." But knowing that the concept of brothers doesn't only mean brotherhood, it means this bond, of which brotherhood is an example. So Joseph was saying, "I am seeking brothership, brotherhood, kinship with the Shekhinah, with the divine presence. That's what I'm seeking." Okay. Now, in a technical sense, how does this happen? How can the divine presence and the soul of a person form a bond? So the various commentaries in the Zohar explain it in various ways. They have various explanations of how this works. But the ultimate idea is that in order for there to be a bond, so a person has to raise himself up from his preoccupation with worldly matters into, he has to raise himself, she has to raise themselves up into a more spiritual state of being in order to bond with the divine presence. That's the explanation, and there's technical aspects to it. Without getting too much into the technical aspects, I'll just give you a sort of a brief overview of the technical aspects. Basically, the idea is that Yesod and Malchut have to be bonded together. Yesod and Malchut. Joseph represents Yesod and Malchut. Even though Malchut is in the diagram here is lower than Yesod, but this is Malchut in this particular world. There are various planes of existence that Kabbalah talks about. In fact, there's 5 planes of existence, or 5 worlds, as they're called in Kabbalah. The lowest world is called the world of Asiya, the world of action. That's the world basically in which we live. Then there's a much more spiritual world, which is really the world occupied primarily by angelic forces, angelic beings. It's called the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, where the underlying conceptual basis of what happens in this world takes place. Then there's the world of Bria, which is the world of coming into being. The world of creation, it's called, but the world of coming into being. It's pure life force without being defined in the way that it is in the lower 2 worlds. That's the 3rd world up. Then there's the world of Atzilut, which is the world of the manifestation of godliness, the world of closeness to God, the world of the manifestation, the revelation of godliness, called the world of Atzilut. Then there's the world of Adam Kadmon. That's the highest world, which is the all-encompassing world, and is the first and highest and total revelation of godliness that is in existence. In other words, of course, God exists beyond that, but what can be revealed is the highest level that can be revealed is in the world of Adam Kadmon Ak. Okay, so when Joseph is seeking a unification, when Yesod, the Sphira of Yesod, is seeking unification with Malchut, we're talking about Malchut of a higher world, not Malchut necessarily in the lower world. Joseph, as a representative of humanity, of human beings, of his family, of whatever you want to say, is seeking unification with a higher level of spirituality, with the godly life force as it's manifested in one of the higher worlds. And this could be right throughout the worlds, in fact. It could be in the world of Yetzirah, it could be the world of Bria, it could be in the world of Atzilut, even in the world of Adam Kadmon. So what is Joseph? Joseph is the one that bonds to the divine presence. Now, in a physical sense, usually when the Sphirot are corresponded, when they're explained as corresponding to the various parts of the body, Yesod corresponds to the male organ, and Malchut corresponds to the female organ, right? So when there's a yichud, a unification of Yesod and Malchut, of male and female, so to speak, of what's called Knesset Yisrael, the collective soul, and Malchut, the divine presence. When that bond forms, that is what the soul is always seeking. That's what the soul is really seeking. Now, to explain it a little bit more in depth. When Joseph goes out, he's leaving his father's house, right? In other words, he's leaving the spiritual atmosphere of his father's house. Now, don't forget, the spiritual atmosphere of Jacob's house is the spiritual atmosphere of the higher worlds. I'll just give you an example of this. When Jacob went in to get the blessings from his father, as you probably know the story, Esau was the firstborn, was Isaac's firstborn. Yitzhak's firstborn was Esau. And towards the end of his life, Isaac wanted to give Esau a blessing. Isaac was blind at this point in time. He wanted to give him a blessing. And then Isaac's wife, Rivka, overheard that he was going to give a blessing. And she said, oh no, what a disaster. If Esau gets the blessing is going to go completely to waste, because the father, being a very, very holy person, did not understand where his wayward son was spiritually, and where he was heading even worse. And she said it's impossible. If she gives him the blessings, that'll be his destruction, this boy's destruction, and it'll be destruction of the blessing itself. The blessing will go completely to waste. It'll be useless. I'll take questions in a couple minutes. So Rivka then tells her son Yaakov, Jacob, to dress up as if he was Esau and go into the father, Isaac, into their father, and get the blessings, which he did. I don't want to get into that whole story because a couple of weeks ago already, but the important point is like this. Isaac senses, he's blind, but he can't see, but he senses that when Jacob comes in, there's something qualitatively different from his sensing of Jacob than he usually senses from his son Esau. What happens when Jacob comes in? He says, "See, the scent of my son is like the scent of a garden which God has blessed." What is the scent of a garden which God has blessed? The scent of a garden which God has blessed, says the Zohar, this is the scent of the Garden of Eden. The garden which God has blessed is the Garden of Eden. So when Jacob comes in, he's surrounded by, so to speak, the Garden of Eden. Then afterwards, Jacob goes out, and now Esau comes in. And it says that Isaac Vayeishev Yitzchak charad gadol ad ma'od, and Isaac starts trembling with fear. And he says, "Who are you?" So he tells him it's Esau. But on the commentaries on this, that Isaac was trembling with fear, the commentaries say, why was he trembling with fear? Because he sensed Gehenna, he sensed purgatory, hell, the opposite of the Garden of Eden, Hades. What's another word for it? When Esau came into the room, he sensed hell, Gehenna. Esau was a wicked person, an evil person, and Isaac sensed this, especially in contrast to Jacob, who was in there. So in other words, what am I trying to say from this is that a person walks around with their aura. The aura can be the aura of Gan Eden. By the way, the word aura in maybe a Greek word, I'm not sure, but the word aura is actually from the Hebrew word or, which means light. In other words, the light that surrounds you is called your aura, right? The light that surrounds a person could be from the Garden of Eden. Alternatively, it could be the darkness that surrounds a person. And I guess you wouldn't call it an aura, but whatever it is, the darkness that surrounds the person is Gehenna, hell, right? That's where that was where Esau was. So, the idea is that when Jacob sends Joseph to look for his brothers, what essentially it means is Joseph is being sent out to attempt to make a yichud, a unification with the divine presence, but where? Not in the house of Jacob, where the light of godliness, the light of the Garden of Eden already shines, but outside, elsewhere. He sends him out. Just like he had to leave the Holy Land and go down to the house of Laban, and there find the divine presence outside, so too, he's sending Joseph, go find the divine presence outside. And that's what Joseph says when he meets the angel. He says, I am seeking my brothers. But don't translate it as my brothers. I am seeking that brotherly relationship with the divine presence, so that the divine presence could be called my brother. What's the difference between a brotherly relationship, a relationship of siblings, and a relationship of husband and wife? A relationship of husband and wife can be terminated, right? Unfortunately, it happens, and these days, quite often, that husbands and wives part ways. A husband and wife can part ways, and that's the end of the relationship, legally and spiritually. Whereas siblings, as long as they're alive, they're still siblings, and it doesn't. The relationship is not dissolved. The relationship might not be a good one, but they're still, technically speaking, siblings. It's not a relationship that can be dissolved per se. Okay. So the idea is that Joseph has been sent to the outside, into the outer world, into the lower worlds, to find the divine presence even in the lower world. And this is the way the Baal Shem Tov explains it. The Baal Shem Tov says that to a certain extent, it is easier to get into a relationship with the divine presence outside of the land of Israel than it is in the land of Israel. Because in the land of Israel, there are far more stringent conditions for this unification, for this bond to form between a person and the divine presence. Why? Because that's the Holy Land. That's, so to speak, God's palace. However, in the outer world, in other words, the world outside of the land of Israel, what's called Chutz La'aretz, this the Baal Shem Tov explains, is like a king on a journey. The king does not take his palace with him when he goes on a journey. So he stays in a hotel or something, but it's not, a hotel might be a nice hotel, but it's not like a palace. It might not even be a great hotel. It might be just a little inn that he has to stay in by the way, because he's traveling. And everyone understands that he's traveling. He's not going to take his palace with him. But as long as the place is reasonably clean and presentable, then the divine presence will rest in it, so to speak, like in an inn or a hotel along the way while the king is traveling. That's what the Baal Shem Tov explains it using this analogy. So the same thing applies with the soul, even though the soul might not be perfect. But if it's seeking out its brotherhood, it's seeking out this brothership, this brotherhood with the Shekhinah, with the divine presence, even though the person, like the hotel, might not be perfect, this bond is possible because God sends us out into the world in order to find the divine presence. That's what it is. That's why we're here. We're here to seek out and to find the divine presence and bond with it in whatever situation we find ourselves. And that is what the Baal Shem Tov teaches on this teaching about Joseph going out, being sent out by his father Jacob into the world. It's in order to make this bond, to make a bond of Malchut and Yesod. Okay, now let me just answer a couple of questions over here. One question: does Malchut raise up and join with Yesod during Erev Shabbat? Yes. The unity, like to others, about the unity, equaling unity from above. Yes, that's what happens. Yes. A brother is born for adversity. I'm not sure what the verse actually says. That's the translation. I would have to see the original to be able to tell you what it means. But possibly, I'm not sure that this is what the verse is talking about, but possibly the verse means that every person is born with a challenge or with challenges which he or she is worthy of, or not worthy is the wrong word, is capable of managing. There's a sort of Hasidic aphorism, a saying that goes like this, that if everyone were to hang up all of his troubles on a hook, and you can have your choice of which troubles, you have to take one package. Some package you have to take. Life's not perfect. We don't live in the Garden of Eden, right? But if you would choose a package, there's no doubt that you would choose the one that you have. And the reason is because you did choose it. This is what you chose, and this is why you're here, and this is what you're doing. So that is that's the idea of a brother is born for adversity. Maybe this is the idea that every person is born with his challenge, with his challenger, or with his challenges. And this is what you need in order to be able to progress. It's sometimes explained in Kabbalah as like a person has two legs. Well, most people, there are people that unfortunately have had amputations and so on and so forth, but in general, a person has two legs, and you can't walk with one leg. You have to walk with two legs. In other words, it's the opposition of legs, so to speak, that makes you walk forward, that enables you to walk forward. If you had only one leg, you would have to sort of jump. You would have to hop around on your one leg. In fact, that's how the angels proceed. They hop, so to speak, right? But having two legs, having two sides of the story, having two perhaps opposites, the right and the left, enables us to progress. Challenges are opportunities for growth. That is correct. That's exactly true. All right, are there any other questions? So what is the Shekhinah? The Shekhinah is the divine presence. To put it this way, the revelation of godliness in this world is called, not only in this world, but in all the worlds, the imminent revelation of God rather than transcendent revelation. That is what is called the Shekhinah. Now, there's not two separate things, the Shekhinah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is called the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shekhinah, which is, so to speak, the male and female elements, so to speak. But these are only sort of analogies. What we mean is immanent and transcendent aspects of both of them, aspects of God. They're not two different things. They're just two different manifestations, two different modes of interaction. So the Shekhinah is the divine presence within the world. The life force of all things is basically the Shekhinah. Whereas the transcendent experience makes one become out of the world, in a sense, transcending existence. One merges into the being of God in the transcendent revelation. Okay, someone else asked about the concept of choosing our own packages. It says that all souls, so to speak, line up in heaven, waiting to come down to this world, because there's a tremendous advantage coming down to this world, and the advantage is that In the upper world, when the soul is in the upper world, it progresses very, very slowly upwards. It has the chance of progressing with the progress of creation itself. In other words, it's always a little sort of spiraling upwards, spiraling upwards, spiraling upwards as we go through time. Things become more sophisticated, more spiritual, more greater revelation of godliness. We may not realize it consciously, but that's the way it is. When the soul comes down to this world, it has the possibility of leaping to a higher level completely. In other words, it's a quantum leap, so to speak. Progress is very slow when it goes according to the plan. But when it goes beyond the plan, in other words, when it goes beyond the brick by brick, stone by stone kind of step by step plan, which is what the soul gets when it comes down to this world, it has the ability of jumping up to a much, much higher level than previously. So all souls, so to speak, line up, waiting to come down to this world into a physical body where they can do good deeds and learn, where they can learn the Torah and do good deeds in this world. And then when the soul returns to its original abode, it returns to a much higher level than it would have been on had things progressed in the normal course of things. So that's why everyone, every soul waits to come down here, and it chooses its package, its challenge by which it is going to be able to rise up to a higher level. Yes, the Zohar says that Isaac did not perceive Esau's evil. That's the simple understanding of the pasuk straight afterwards, that he didn't perceive his evil, and that's why he gave Jacob the blessings. There are other explanations, also not from the Zohar, but from other places in Hasidic teachings, that he did, in fact, understand who Esau was. But since Esau had reached the depths of evil, he understood if that could be turned around, and his blessing was intended to attempt to turn that around, to turn Esau around. If he could be turned around, then he would bring all the darkness into light. He would transform the darkness into light. And that's what Isaac's intention was, but Esau wasn't ready for that, as we see from his conduct subsequently. He simply wasn't ready for that.